Mother, man.
Spreading faster than a case of the clap in a trailer court. Able to shatter eardrums within a 666-mile radius. A podcast more brutal than all the rest. It's Murder Metal Mayhem! This is Pete Altieri with Murder Metal Mayhem, and I'm doing this interview with filmmaker, author, podcaster, and more, John Borowski. Thanks for taking the time out to do this, John. How's it going up there in Chicago?
It's going great. You know, the usual. Chicago's the home of, gangsters, serial killers, and corrupt politicians. So,
right.
I'm kind of like in a great place here. So,
yeah, you got job security up there.
Yeah, that's true. I could be making these films on weirdos for the rest of my life. But thank you, Pete, for having me on. It's always great to be on Murder Metal Mayhem, and anything I could do for you guys, I'm here.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed your book, Dahmer's Confessions. I think, all your books, and you always put a funny inscription in there. And this one you put, Pete, don't look in the fridge or something like that, which was great. How did that project come about? You've got quite a few of these books. Maybe our listeners are more aware of your films and not the books, but this one is really good.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Dahmer's Confession was, I believe, my third book in the series. The first was on H.H. Holmes, and then I followed that up with the Ed Gein file, and I had come across Dahmer's complete interrogation and confession, and I thought, well, this would be another great book for researchers, which is what I do. I take these original case documents and photographs and maps, kind of like what I do with my documentary films, but put it in book form. So they're great, complements to either my films or, serial killer culture or any other works that are out there. And it's just an easier resource for people to research, rather than, searching all over the entire United States or, trying to go to courtrooms in Milwaukee to find the info. And it came about after the Ed Gein file was published in 2016, and Dahmer's Confession was next in 2017. And when I was going about it, I knew I had to kind of not only break up the monotony of the confession, so I inserted some newspaper segments and some maps of Dahmer's apartment and some other artwork, but I made sure at the end I wanted to put an art and ephemera gallery, tying Dahmer into serial killer culture, because he's a big part of that. I'm in group, you know how that goes. You're probably in these groups. I'm in groups of Dahmer groups with females now who profess their love for Dahmer.
That's true. They love it.
They love him. He's dead and he was gay, but they still want him. They do.
That's what Bob says. They're the biggest group that comes through the Dahmer tour is the millennial female.
Yes, they are, and the females are the largest demographic for true crime, but especially, some of them like Dahmer, and I don't, bemoan them. That's great. There's nothing, they can't get anything out of it anyway. I'm a friend with a girl in Australia, and she's bought my book, and, I see her posts where, she posts pictures of her kissing Dahmer and stuff. And I'm like, I just think it's cute. He's dead. He's, hey, spread the word of true crime, right?
Sure.
So that's why I included that art gallery at the end of the book by artists such as Nico Clow, Shane Owen, a.k.a. Sam Hain. Again, it just, illustrates how Dahmer is part of that serial killer culture. And the cover of the book, by Annie Clift, it's that epitome of Dahmer. It's his mugshot and when they're carrying out the barrels.
Yeah, I was very iconic, and I really liked the way you did that. All your books are very well put together. They look really good. That was my first experience with you, as I ordered the Fish book and DVD, and I was like, wow, this is really well put together. So your books look really good too. They're definitely getting their money's worth.
Thank you. And again, I put them out there for people to appreciate them. I don't make a ton of money off this stuff. We're all artists.
Right.
We're all struggling, and that's why we help each other, especially the true crime horror realms, and which is a great thing, and we all kind of know each other. So
Yeah, I agree. I think it is good to be able to help each other out, especially right now. Now, I found the part of your book by Stephen Gianangelo very fascinating. It's not a long section, but it's a very well written synopsis of what he kind of thinks about, what made Dahmer do what he did. How do you look at I mean, obviously you put it in your book, but I mean, what do you think about some of the stuff he brought up?
Yeah, I agree. Steve Gianangelo is an expert, in his book, Real Life Monsters. I highly suggest
It's
to
amazing.
anyone, isn't it? I think I told you, read through it and then you read through it again because there's so much to take in.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is phenomenal. It's my top favorite, true crime book, exploring the psychopathology of serial murderers.
Mm-hmm.
And, I agree with his assessment. I always felt that, Dahmer was lonely in the end. Obviously, that's not an excuse for what he did.
Right.
But, I think Dahmer, some of these serial killers, if they were pushed in the right direction, like Dahmer could have made a great surgeon.
Sure.
Think about it. He
Right.
wanted to know what the insides of the bodies were like. But beyond that,
Right.
I think he was lonely. His parents took his little brother and left him alone in the house to fend for himself when he was 18 years old.
Yeah, that's
Imagine that.
fucked up. One account I read that the two of them were left, but then I do seem to recall reading that they took the younger brother but just left him. So
Yeah.
that is awful.
Right. I mean, you're becoming an adult and, now's the time for you. Okay, I'm going to get a job, maybe go to college, have my parents to support me. And they were like, hey, screw you, you're on your own.
Right. And they got divorced. All that happened right as he graduates high school.
Yeah, they were both a little loony. I just the other night, a couple nights ago, I watched that recent Oxygen show, Dahmer on Dahmer.
Yeah.
And I had never seen that before. And what I found interesting was, growing up, Dahmer's mother never touched him, only when she changed his diapers.
Oh,
and his
wow.
father, when you see his father seems on cloud nine. Like he was
Right.
probably not even aware of anything that was going on in Dahmer's life, being an
Right.
alcoholic, and now he says, oh, he should have found God and all this stuff. But, you could tell he was out of it. So that way, too, it makes sense. Here's Dahmer. He doesn't want a human to communicate with because his parents didn't communicate with him. He wants another man just to lay there and do what he wants, but nobody's going to go along with that.
Right. Sure.
So when you look at his psychopathology in the grand scheme of things with his parents and how he grew up, it makes sense. Unfortunately.
Yeah, but like when you watch that interview, the Stone Phillips interview with the parents individually, of course, they both act like it's the other one. Neither of them, of course, is going to admit any fault.
Of course, yeah. They finger point. I know the mother was, had, mental issues. She was on, numerous drugs at the time, and when she was actually pregnant with Dahmer, she was on all these drugs. So in the end, we still don't know what causes these things. But with the help from people like Steve Gianangelo and some other experts, that is a great reason why we should study these serial killers. At the same time, I was watching the Kemper one, which has a lot of, and Kemper is very introspective.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why, I'm against the death penalty, because if we get someone like Kemper or Dahmer who's going to sit down and say, here's why I did, here's why I think I did it, here's what I was doing. Hey, if we could learn something from that, then why kill them? Then we're not going to learn anything from them.
Right. I used to be a big proponent of the death penalty until I've, through doing this podcast, we've done some of these, false confession stories and, like that Making a Murderer, those types of things, to put enough doubt in my mind to go, you know what, if I can't trust the government to, do anything right, why the hell would I give them the choice, the opportunity to kill the citizens of this country? So I don't believe in it anymore. I think it's worse to condemn somebody to a life in a jail cell. So I think that, let them rot. And like you said, if we can learn anything, that's great.
Yeah, or someone else will take them out, like in Dahmer's case.
True.
And
That's true.
And I think, I think that's why they sent him to prison, because he obviously had some issues mentally.
Right.
But they probably sent them there knowing, well, somebody's going to
eventually, they'll get him.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Now, the detailed confession of Dahmer is in your book, as you mentioned, and Do you think it's rare for serial killers to go into that kind of detail? Because some we've talked about really get graphic and almost get off on rehashing it, and others seem to, like Israel Keys or some of these other ones that get kind of cheeky about, holding back detail as a way to, gain favor later.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what the issue is. Sometimes they're reliving these crimes by telling them, because who else have they told? No one. So they've had this deep hidden secret in them, and sometimes, like in Gacy's case and Dahmer's case and many others, it just comes spilling out
right
at first, but then, it's also hard to know the truth from their fantasy world, which their fantasy world is also sensationalism.
Right. Well, Henry Lee Lucas would be a great example of that. To hear that guy killed 700-800 people, he's like Gilles de Rais, but yet, really, when it comes down to it, they think he only killed 2 or 3. But
exactly.
he got a bunch of Pall Mall cigarettes and strawberry milkshakes out of the deal. But totally messed up. Totally messed up.
You have that too. Like for instance, was Panzerm's complete autobiography truthful? The majority, I believe so.
Right.
Holmes wrote his, and yet one of Holmes's supposed victims came forward later and said, "Hey, I'm alive."
Oh, that's right.
So
or Pee Wee Gaskins is another one who really talked a big game, but maybe not so much.
Right. So I think they want that sensationalism. They all want to be remembered. And which is why I'm surprised that Gacy took back his first confessions. And after that, he claimed he never did it, because he could have been the biggest monster ever. He could have made himself out to be that way for the rest of history, but then he denied it.
Right. Now, can you explain the shrine that Dahmer wanted to build in his apartment? We're doing this Dahmer episode, and obviously the shrine is part of that. And I thought, since you've got the drawings, as you mentioned, of what his apartment, how it was laid out and stuff, and talk a little bit about that and what that was about.
There's an excellent piece of artwork by Shane Owen, a.k.a. Sam Hain, which is beautiful, and that depicts Dahmer's shrine. And what Dahmer wanted his shrine to be was a long black table with the skulls of his victims on the table, 2 skeletons on the left and right sides of the table, and a lamp behind the table. A stool would be in front of the table, because Dahmer said he wanted to meditate at the shrine. Right. He wanted, when you think of some of these tribal, people, I think, he was kind of, maybe in a past life he was in one of these, tribes of, cannibals or people who would keep the skulls of their victims kind of in reverence, or, showing that they have power over them, which is what he did to his victims anyways. He ultimately had power over them.
Right.
And he made this drawing of his vision, which he wanted to do. And that drawing is, somewhere in a legal office or the court, rooms in Milwaukee. But that drawing was close to him completing it, having kept the skulls of his victims and other body parts. He was almost there.
Yeah, that's just frightening. I know I've seen the sketches before, and it's just creepy to think somebody would actually, like you said, he was on his way of being there. He didn't let him go a little bit longer. He may have had that thing fully set up. It's just frightening to think your next door neighbor could be doing something like that.
Yeah, it was interesting that they, there was a Dahmer and Kemper on Kemper, because their necrophilia was very similar. Kemper wanted to keep, kept the heads and parts of his victims, like Dahmer did. But, I think Kemper's growing up, his childhood was like Gacy's, where Gacy had the father, was abusive, whereas Kemper had the mother.
True. Yeah, it's amazing how many of these serial killers have so many things in common when you look at that kind of stuff. The more of them you start to dig into, it's almost like you're telling the same story over and over again. But like you said, mother, father can sometimes be interchanged, or, the upbringing may be a little more rough in this one than the other, but they all seem to have the head injuries, the being bullied, shy, that just on and on. They share so many similarities. It's really crazy.
And it's not always physical abuse, because I think in Dahmer's case it was emotional negligence, which is a form of abuse. Because
Well,
you know
sure.
your mother doesn't want to touch you, your father doesn't even pay attention. You could be drunk, stumbling over, opening a body in front of him, you would just walk by.
Right, right. Now, we've seen other well-known serial killers that have came out and said that they were gay. Do you feel that that plays a part, especially in a time when this was not as socially acceptable, of that penned-up rage like we saw in Gacy? I've always wondered if there's any correlation between the two.
Yeah, I think definitely Gacy exhibited the symptoms of gay repression, keeping that inside of him at the time when he grew up. Just think, growing into your teens and in puberty in your teens in the 50s and 60s
Right.
America, and being gay, as well. 60s later was the love generation, but early 60s, especially the 50s, that was the worst time to be gay in America.
Yeah,
It
and
was
his
against the
dad
law.
was brutal,
Yeah. Well, imagine hearing that every day from your own father, that they're despicable, nasty, dirty.
Right.
And then again, it makes sense that Gacy repressed it, because when he first confessed, I have the original, the first pencil to paper in my apartment right now of when Gacy gave his confession, when the detective took it down.
Wow.
I have it right here, and it's going to be in the film. So Gacy says right on that piece of paper, "Oh, I'm bisexual. I'm not homosexual." That was very important to him, because how society saw homosexuals, and if they found out that he was doing it while he had a business, his whole business would be over.
Right.
I'm not saying that Gacy killed his victims, to cover up being gay, but that played a big part in his repression, because think of how he buried his victims. He covered them up in the crawl space, just like covering up his being gay. It's sad in the end that at that time period he couldn't even be himself.
Right. Now, you think in Dahmer's case that played any part?
I don't think Dahmer's being gay played a part in it. The 80s, kind of, coming into the early 90s, homosexuality was becoming more accepted, of course.
Right.
But with Dahmer, I don't see that correlation. I mean, he had desires for men when he was younger. That there was that jogger that he was going
Right.
like that. He would see a jogger going down his road, and he had fantasies, because even from the beginning he wanted to possess these men totally by killing them or knocking them out. He didn't want to say, "Hey, hi jogger, what's going on?" But of course he could have been rebuffed, and the guy could have got upset because he was gay. But I really think that ultimately Dahmer wanted control of them, and it was kind of easier for him to dispense with the pleasantries in a sense. But later on he refined it, of course.
Right. Very, very interesting. Well, I'm glad I got to get your 2 cents on this, because, like I said, we're doing this Dahmer episode, and I sure appreciate your input. What I know you talked about the Gacy film, John. What else is coming up from you, and how can our listeners get a hold of your work, your books, your movies? What's going on?
Yes, I'm currently working on the John Wayne Gacy murders, and that's pretty much evolving into a mini-series, I believe, because
Oh, wow.
I've got, my current rough cut is about 4 or 5 hours. So, I want to make it similar to the last Ted Bundy documentary series, where, it was like a 5-part series.
Yeah.
I'm working on that. And then I recently published the John Wayne Gacy book, Hunting a Predator, and also Panzram at Leavenworth. And right now it's really, still filming around Chicago. We just filmed recently at the L&L Tavern, where Gacy appeared in full pogo clown outfit several times, and Dahmer actually sat at the L&L Tavern and would look at Dunkin' Donuts across the street at the young gay men and potential victims.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, and people could check out my work. My website is johnborowski.com, just my name, and my films are on Amazon Prime. And also, if they want to go to my store where I have autographed items, it's the same as my website, but it's store.johnborowski.com.
Very cool. What about the video show you've been doing, John? How's anybody, you want to tell anybody about that?
Yeah, the show is called Crimes of Our Times. It's on the platform of Get Vocal, but I also upload the episodes to my YouTube channel. And, I'm scheduling forward, so you and I will have to talk. We'll have you guys on my show because I'm
Yeah.
scheduling the next round of interviews. It's been great. The reception has been great. We've had Catherine Ramsland and Harold Schechter and Jeff Gaither and Nico Clow, all these people that are involved, whether in true crime, oddities, or art.
Yeah, that's really cool. I did see you've had a slew of guests on there. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and then another project I'm working on, which is very interesting. Again, the artist, Shane Owen, aka Sam Hain, we're going to do a serial killer coloring book. He's doing all these phenomenal black and white
Nice.
artworks that, you should see some of these. You could go to his Instagram or Facebook and see he's got Gacy and Fred and Rose West and,
Oh, cool.
these images. I want to color it. That's how I love these images. They're very
That's cool. Yeah, we did an adult activity book, and we've got a Joe Matheny, a Ricky Casso, and another serial killer in ours to color. So yeah, those are fun. I think that's great. Well, thank you so much for doing this, John. We do appreciate it, and best of luck in everything you do.
Thanks, Pete. Love Murder Metal Mayhem.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Mother, man.